When I was about 10 or 11, my family was driving to visit my grandparents in another town, about 45 minutes, along the same roads we always took. We travelled down country roads, mostly cornfields the whole way. It's literally a left, right for nearly 30 minutes, and then left to their home. Pretty much a straight shot, really. There's homes along the way, of course. On one home, this white house, kind of sad looking, fence sort of falling down, paint peeling off siding, more greyish than white actually. The house is 2 stories, square kind of thing, the lawn not mowed on a regular basis, rusty, crapped out looking vehicle in the driveway. As we're driving by, I'm compelled to look at the house, which I never really do. Usually I'm buried nose deep in a book. Every previous drive to my grandparents, I maybe give it a glance as we pass, if that. Anyways, the moment I look at the house, I'm slammed with a totally different reality. Instead of being in the vehicle with my family, I'm now inside the house. I'm cowering, trying to hide under a kitchen table, which has no tablecloth, and a man is storming into the room, hollering about something. I can only see his legs, but he's a big type of guy. I watch this girl's legs frantically dash up the stairs, which the doorway to the stairs is facing the narrow end of the kitchen table. But the table is too close for me to see all the way up the stairs, because the kitchen is tiny. I can only see, perhaps halfway up the stairs. She's like maybe 13. She's slightly older than me in the car passing the house, but older by a few years than me under the table inside the house's kitchen. The man clashes up the stairs in a fury, close on the girl's heels. A lot of screaming and yelling is going on, but I can't make out any of the words. I see the legs all disappear out of sight for a moment, and a split second of terror-inducing silence, followed by the thudding of a body tumbling down the stairs. The man's thrown the girl down the stairs, and as she falls below the bottom half, entering my line of sight, she makes eye contact with me, her 2 braids dangling down the sides of her face, dishevelled, messed up. Her eyes plead with me to help. Then, suddenly, in a split instant, I'm back in my parents' vehicle, a little ways past the house, with the sudden urge to shout, "Stop! The girl in there is hurt!" As soon as this urge hits me, it's followed by a mental image of a gun. It's around Halloween time, and Fox Family is doing their annual countdown to Halloween shows and movies. We just switched from watching 2020 news, and I'm super looking forward to the Halloween witch-themed movie that's going to be on Fox Family. My mom is one of those people who always switches between 2 shows during commercial breaks in an attempt to watch 2 shows simultaneously. We briefly watched a segment of a commercial about a Salem witch trial documentary. I'm like nearly 14 here. I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor directly in front of the TV. And suddenly, I'm no longer sitting in my parents' living room. I'm 18 years old, with red hair, braided and bangs. I'm wearing a dress similar to what you would see on period-clad reenactors of the early 1700s. A crowd has formed around a platform, the one from where the witch is to be hung. I'm hit with an immensely heavy feeling of sadness, and yet I cannot allow the sadness to show if I don't wish to be in danger too. I push my way through the crowd, gently nudging gentlemen and elders out of the way with a polite demeanour, pushing, perhaps a bit more roughly than I intended, out of the way those who are roughly my age and heeding no mind to the children jostling in the crowd. I managed to nudge my way towards the front, stopping about 2 rows people deep from the very front of the crowd. I positioned myself behind 2 other ladies, one with dirty blonde braids that are twisted in a bun, the other with black hair, slightly wavy, under a bonnet or some kind of head covering. The left half of my body is aligned directly behind the blonde. My right is aligned behind the black-haired lady. The blonde is 19, and the other is 22 or 23. We all share the sadness at the misfortune of the witch, yet we must all uphold the image of rage, indignant righteousness, the pride in seeing justice served to this witch who has betrayed us, harmed our community, family, friends. We know it's wrong, and the weight of our sadness is felt keenly amongst the three of us. Yet we hold no power to stop this tragedy, and we cannot acknowledge our pain. I gently squeeze the shoulder of the blonde and nudge the black-haired woman in the small of her back in an attempt to give comfort. We do not acknowledge one another, but stand in witness to our friend's memory, lest her death shall be in vain. And I'm back sitting on the floor in front of the TV. I'm blinking my eyes and glancing around at my family members to see if they've noticed I've been gone. But I wasn't gone. I'm still there, and even though I was gone for what felt like half an hour, maybe a minute or two has actually passed. I'm super confused and feel like crying tears of immense sadness, anger, and pain. Nobody in my family realizes something is amiss, and I sit in confusion throughout the entire movie. I go to the bathroom during the next commercial to stare at myself in the mirror, to reassure myself that I'm not actually a redhead. I don't have bangs. I'm vaguely flipping through channels, finally settling onto the History Channel. I'm watching some black and white reenactments of like the Battle of Gettysburg or something. Suddenly, I'm a nameless, personless set of eyes watching a woman and two girls, early teens, each hanging from a noose from a wooden frame. Their feet dangling lifeless beneath the hems of their dresses, swaying ever so gently, even though there's no breeze. Almost as if they've been dead only shortly, but not long enough for them to be entirely still. This one was very sudden, as if the next second I'm there, I wasn't. I was someone watching these poor souls dangling lifelessly from their nooses, but I'm there so briefly and then gone. Barely have time to register details of myself and relation. My son's almost 1. It's the night before his first birthday. I've felt uneasy ever since he was born, living in the house that I do with his dad and grandparents. It shouldn't be making me uneasy. The house and land are new construction. I'm anticipating the celebration of his birthday, complete with a cake made in the likeness of his favourite Sesame Street character. I put him to sleep in his crib, which is wedged between the wall and our bed. If he were to climb out successfully, he's likely to tumble onto me, as two sides are against the wall. One's against my bed, and the fourth side, the short width of the crib, is the only one that allows a direct floor to the floor. I always sleep with my arm through the slats, his little fingers wrapped around one of mine. I do this so I know if he wakes up crying. I wake the moment he lets go of my finger. In the middle of the night, I'm awoken with a groggy sense of confusion and immediately peer into the crib to check on him, since he's not clutching my finger. I see him standing at the foot of his crib, awake, reaching for me. I'm fully awake now, looking at my son, and thinking he just wants to be held, like he does from time to time. I reach out to him, encouraging him to come towards me, and he does. But something's not quite right. My son doesn't move that fluidly, and I glance down at the other end of the crib, terror rising inside of me. My son is sleeping, and the moment I register this fact, the thing at the other end of the crib becomes full of fury, desperation, and jealousy, and tries to reach me before I grab my son. I snatch my son up, snarl at the thing, "You are my child, get away!" And the instant I have my precious son safe in my arms, the thing vanishes. It's at that moment I realise that thing didn't have feet, simply a bit of space, empty space that existed where feet should have been. It isn't yet midnight, and I sense the risk is not yet over. I flee the room because I need to get into direct moonlight for a bit of protection. Nuts. I have no idea why this thought pops into my head. I don't question it. I bolt and wander through the house, searching for a window spot in direct moonlight. The window in the corner of the living room offers direct moonlight, and I settle into the corner of the room, cradling my son in my arms, and whispering a sort of chant or prayer that pops into my head. I say it 3 times, and make sure to stay within the moonbeams until early morning. As the sky lightens, I fall asleep, holding my child, certain that I've narrowly escaped some horrible thing happening. My son's grandparents are confused to find me the next morning, sleeping in a sitting position with my son in the corner of the living room. The only thing that I'm certain of is that the thing was both full of jealousy and desperation. Almost like that, its last chance was that night. It needed something from me before my son turned one. Like once my son was officially one, it was out of chances. And also, I feel certain that it couldn't get what it wanted during daytime. I've just bought and moved into my first home. I'm still getting to know the roads in my neighbourhood, still getting confused on exactly which street I'm to turn on to navigate through the oldest subdivision I now call my home. It's not like the cookie-cutter newer ones you see today. My son's now a toddler, in his car seat in the backseat of my car. I'm driving almost to the stop sign at which I turn left to go home. As I'm slowing down to a stop, reality shifts. I'm a Native American boy, 12 years old. I'm wandering through a wooded area, not densely forested, but spread out, lightly wooded. The ground is soft, damp. I'm following a slightly muddied, slightly dried dirt trail. The trail is not often used, but used often enough that about 6 inches in width is barren of newly growing plant life. It's a sunny day, and the light is flickering through the trees and leaves, and I'm wandering in search of something. I need to find myself and who I am, and nature's silence, which isn't entirely quiet, is comforting. I know I'll eventually find myself, but I'm taking comfort in this journey. A sense of calm seriousness permeates each step I take. I'm at once entirely familiar with this stretch of land. I know each branch, tree, rock, pebble and stone, like I know each crease and fold of my skin. Each bit of my body and its movements, each intimate thought in my head. And then, I'm back behind the steering wheel of my car, sitting at the stop sign, my toddler babbling away happily in the back seat. The only confusion and discomfort I feel with this one is that not that I was somewhere else, but that there's a lingering of the trees around me where houses should be. The scenery is exactly as what I, the boy, was seeing, with the exception that the stop sign is real, and everything inside my car is real. But the landscape outside isn't the neighbourhood in which I live, but rather the one through which I, the boy, was wandering. Almost like 2 different landscapes from 2 different times failed to separate completely. Yet I feel strongly that both places are the same, just that they existed at 2 different times. It takes me a few moments before the landscape around me switches back to the neighbourhood, houses, and the cars that it actually is. After moving into my house, whenever I was using the bathroom or showering, I would close the bathroom door. Every time, without fail, the door would gently swing open while I was either on the toilet or in the shower. At first, I just assumed that I failed to shut the door completely, or that my son, a toddler at the time, was opening it. When it started happening while I was the only one home, or my child was asleep, I began to feel that something wasn't quite right. I never felt threatened, just annoyed. I started to get out of the shower to reclose the door, only to have it swing open again. I'd check that the door was firmly shut and would tug on the knob a few times before getting into the shower. Each time, the door would gently swing open, to my dismay. I knew the house had previously been owned by an older woman who had been moved to a nursing home and had been vacant for some time when I bought it. Beyond that, I really didn't know much of who lived here prior to me. I started asking neighbours and got bits and pieces of the home's history. I was informed that it was owned by a couple who'd built the house after their children had grown and moved on, and that the husband had passed prior to the wife, who was still alive when I bought the house. No child has ever lived in my home until my son, and that it had originally been located a few streets over from where it currently sits. I'm the second owner of the home, as the couple who built it lived here, and I'd purchased it from the wife, through her daughter, with POA. There was a bit of discrepancy over when exactly the husband had passed. I'd heard 10 years prior to my purchasing the house, to 2 or 3 years prior to the lady being moved to a nursing home. After thinking over why the bathroom door always opened, and why it never did so if my boyfriend was home, it always opened when it was just me, or me and my son. It never opened on me if anyone else was in the house. I was puzzled over this, and I just couldn't figure it out. I finally mentioned this to my boyfriend, and he jokingly said I must have a lovesick ghost following me around. I laughed it off, but the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if it was indeed a ghost or spirit. I never felt threatened or uncomfortable, I just didn't know what to make of it. So one day, I'm showering while my boyfriend is out with son, and the door gently swings open. I step out of the shower, go close to it, and once I ensure it's tightly shut, I climb back in. But curiosity gets a hold of me, and I keep my head poking out from the shower, eyes trained on the door to see if it opens again. Within a few minutes, sure enough, the door gently swings open again. Exasperated and slightly annoyed, I say, "Your wife isn't dead, she's still alive, but lives in a nursing home now. I just want to shower without the door opening, please. I bought this home and I live here now with my boyfriend and our child. Your wife lives in a nursing home now." And the door has never swung open since. So I was 11 when this happened. I was staying at my father's house. He had lived in a shared community home and they gave him the attic. It was a great size and it had a jacuzzi in the bathroom. Now, this is in Malden, Massachusetts. The house is very old. I mean very old. Everything creaks when you step on it and the windows have fancy old locks in the attic. It was the only room in the entire house with such locks. My parents had just divorced recently, and my dad moved here to have his own place temporarily, until he could afford a place on his own that wasn't shared. He normally went to work early, around 9 a.m, and I was left in there by myself. I really wasn't scared of doing so. Now, my father had been interested in witchcraft. He considered himself a white witch. I was fine with it, as long as he was happy. Before we left for work, he went into the closet and shut the door. I heard him cast his spells or whatever, I don't know, but it was in a mumble. He bought a miniaturized pan with a candle inside of it with him. I thought nothing of it, until he left for work. Strange things started happening the minute he left. Bathroom door randomly closed. Now I know what you're thinking. Old house equals drafts that may close it. No sir. This door had a doorstop under it. And I know it did prior to it closing, because I had just put it there. Since he had already left, who was there to move it? But I was like, whatever, and slid it back under the door. But the minute I did so, I heard a creak by his dining table. Now, this attic isn't that spacious, but it's a great distance between the table and the bathroom. Still, I thought nothing of it. I carried on as usual, playing Xbox 360 for a few hours. He gets home late around 11, and now it's about 7-ish o'clock. It got dark very quickly, and I had the light of the TV and ceiling light to keep me sane. But oh fuck, the power goes out on the whole block. I look outside, not a street lamp at all. Now it's pitch black outside and in, and the only light is the moonlight. I'm fucking scared shitless. Then the bathroom door closes again. No draft. I put the doorstep under it and it still closes. But this time, it didn't sound soft. It was a light slam, as if someone had pushed it shut. And I swear to God, it felt as though not 1 or 2, but 3 people were standing near me. Goosebumps hit, and I swear I could hear a light whisper coming from the closet. I'm almost to the point of crying when the power cuts back on and all the doors in the room swing open with force. And in the corner of the room, a tall, shadowy figure with a somewhat church-looking hat stood. Tears fill my eyes, and the fucking thing turns around to reveal a Moses parting the Red Sea wide smile. But that's the thing, no other features besides a smile that I could remember before I fainted. My father came home and cussed me out for having all the lights on, but I was so confused. I'll never step foot in that house again. Luckily, I was leaving the next day. I just got home from a deployment overseas, and the first stop I made was to my dad's to see my little siblings. My sister's 5, my brother's 3, and my second sister is almost a year now. They live in Lowell, in a quiet neighbourhood, far from the old house my dad used to live in. Everything and everyone was pretty normal as I remember. My sisters share a room and my brother has his own. However, they all sleep in one room when it's time for bed. I sleep in my brother's room when I come over. So one night, I'm playing around with all of them, trying to be a good big bro, when my sister, 5 years old, asks me, "Who's that?" "Who are you talking about, Micah?" She points towards the door to the hallway, which is opened, and shows the long hallway to the other room. Confused as I was, I said, "There's nobody there." She continues staring down the hallway, and I ignore it, figuring it just to be her imagination at work. But here's the question that made my hair stand up. Why is he wearing that hat? Frustrated at this point, I get up and walk down the hallway, looking around and telling her there's nobody here. My dad walks upstairs and my other sister begins crying from the other room. I return to Micah and my little bro, and she's still staring down the hallway. She looks over at me and says, "I don't think he likes you." "Why doesn't he like me?" I respond, "Because he can't get you anymore." Now at this point, I'm fucking anxious. Could she be seeing what I saw a decade ago? After this point, she stops speaking of this figure and returns to playing as normal. I ask her about it later, and she says, "I don't know what you're talking about." Definitely weird. And why couldn't my little brother also see what she was talking about, since he was right there with us? Any information on the Shadow Man that anyone has would be nice to hear. So I live in a pretty old house. It's about 80 years old. The house beside me is actually the oldest house in my town. I believe it's over 200 years old, or at least close to it. I barely have any encounters in my house, but I do know something dwells inside. Whether it's a spirit or what, I don't know. My first experience with it was when I was about 16. I remember being in my room watching TV, and then I was called to eat supper, so I got up, went in the kitchen, fixed my food, and walked back in my room. But as soon as I opened the door to my room and took a few steps, I hit what it felt like a wall, and I spilled my food everywhere and knocked me back a little. But I was horrified to see that I literally ran into nothing I could see. But there was something definitely there, just was invisible. I stood there, dazed and terrified. I couldn't move because I was too scared to, but I eventually stuck my hand out to see if it was still there, and there was nothing. So I cleaned everything up, went back and got more food, stuck my hand out in case it happened again. But it was fine, so I sat down and ate, and nothing happened again for a while. And I never told anyone about it, because it was so stupid and no one would believe me. My second encounter didn't happen for years and years later, but it was while I was sleeping. I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, when I heard what sounded like scratches coming from within my mattress. It didn't bother me, but it did confuse me, because I thought it could be a mouse and just wasn't sure how it got in my mattress. Then, I began to hear it in the walls, which again didn't faze me, just thought it was a mouse. As I was laying there, I felt a tug above my head. I sleep with the blanket over my head, it just feels more comfortable to me. Still didn't faze me. I thought it was from the blowing of my fan, but then the next tug literally took the blanket off my head. I got jumped out of my bed fast as fuck, turning my light on. I thought it was a mouse still, and it was pulling my blanket with its teeth or something. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find anything, and the scratching stopped, as well I laid back down, and fell right asleep. Nothing ever happened again. I'm not sure what it is or what it wants, but I believe it likes to mess with me every once in a blue moon, and honestly, that's completely fine with me, as long as it never gets worse. Around 2011, my older cousin bought a small 2-bedroom single house in a quiet neighbourhood for retired folks. The house was very small with only 850 square feet of interior space, but it sat on a large plot of land. We could have easily fit 2 more houses like it on that lot, and still would have nice leftover space for yards and gardening. I was still a college student at the time, and I lived with my cousin. When he bought the house, I moved in with him. There were the 2 of us living there. According to the real estate agent, the house had been abandoned for around 3 years. The previous owner basically left it unmaintained and moved to a different state. The house had 1 main floor, a small attic, and an unfinished basement. The first time we walked in, the floorboard was already rotted out. We could see the basement through it. Everything was in horrible condition, and we would have to do major restoration to make it livable again. The property also had a small storage shed in the back of the lot. My cousin got a great offer, so we took the deal without much hesitation. Weird things started to happen when we began our restoration work. One day, while we were working in the bathroom, my cousin told me he had to go to Home Depot for some stuff, and so he left. I heard him open the front door, get outside, close it, and turn on his car, and actually drive away. I was taking apart the old boards that were nailed on the bathroom walls. My back was facing the bathroom door. 5 minutes after my cousin left, the bathroom door, which was opened, started to slowly move to the closed position. I knew because I could hear the creaky old door sound it made. I turned around and saw the door continue to close on its own. Then it stopped as it touched the door frame, then bounced back a little. I thought, maybe it's just the wind. Then suddenly, the door pulled itself shut tightly, as if there was someone on the other side of the door pulling it. It happened right in front of my eyes. I was only 4 feet away from it. No wind could have done that. Plus, all the windows were closed around the house, so there couldn't possibly be any wind. You might think that maybe the AC caused it. No, this old house didn't have central AC. We had to put in window AC units afterwards. At this point, I thought my cousin was messing with me, so I called out to him, but there was no response, just silence. I opened the door, continued to call for him, telling him to stop joking. My cousin wasn't there. I checked the parking lot. He was gone. I even got outside and did a parameter check. No one was there. I still can't explain what happened. After the restoration was done, we moved in. My cousins sometimes went on business trips for weeks, and there would just be me in the house. The following happened whenever I was alone in the house. One night, I was studying and had my headphones on. I heard sounds of someone walking around in the basement, which was directly below my bedroom. It sounded like they had slippers on, and I could hear the sound of the slippers dragging on the concrete floor in each step. What's weird was that I couldn't pinpoint exactly which direction it's coming from. It's a strange sensation that the sounds were coming from the back of my head, just right behind me. The only reason that made me think it's from the basement was because the basement was the only area in the house that had concrete and could have made that concrete slipper dragging sound. So I took out my headphones. The sounds of footsteps still went on. The volume of the sound stayed the same with or without headphones. I thought my cousin had come early, so I called out to him and got no reply. I took the flashlight and went to the basement to check it out. It was dark and quiet. No, my cousin had not come home, and no one else was there. This happened like 3 or 4 more times within the first 2 months I lived in that house. After that, I didn't experience anything unusual anymore. My cousin never felt or saw anything weird, but he seemed interested in my stories. His girlfriend, now wife, who had been to the house every other week or so, also expressed her uneasy feelings during her stay. By 2016, during a thunderstorm, the thunder struck our storage shed in the backyard and burned everything inside it. Luckily, the house was untouched. I came home from work only to find a police officer waiting at the front. He told me what had happened and said it's an act of God, and our homeowner's insurance would compensate for the loss. In our Asian culture, people say that when thunder strikes somewhere, often it's to strike down a malevolent force or spirit. We quickly came to a realization that this thunderstrike was more than just an accident. I got my own place and moved out a few months after the fire. My cousin brought another house with his wife a year after that. He still owns the creepy house, and it's been left unoccupied since 2017. He plans to tear the old house down and build a larger one to take advantage of a large loss of land. My family is of a French religion that believes in the after death and in contacting them. My grandfather and father say they can see or hear things. I myself have been a skeptic for a long time, but strange things have been happening for some time that make me question my beliefs. First thing, my ex-girlfriend and I were in the living room watching a movie at dawn, and suddenly I saw a shadow figure out of the corner of my eye going down the stairs that led to my living room where we were. I, doubting the veracity of what I had seen, decided to not care. Soon after, my ex asked me, "Did you see that?" I answered yes, summarising the progress. We both saw the figure, were afraid and went up to the room. Second thing, dreaming with the dead. I've had a few dreams with deceased people that I knew talking to me. My father says it's my way of getting in touch with them, but as I said, I'm quite skeptical. Third thing, sleep paralysis. I've had sleep paralysis my whole life, but the last few have been dark. Example, me and a cousin broke into an abandoned factory, and on the same day, I had sleep paralysis, where I could hear voices saying, "We shouldn't have gone there." My cousin, also on the same night, hears footsteps and knocks on the door of the isolated house where he lives. I've had other bad experiences with sleep paralysis, which according to my father are caused by an obsessive spirit that tries to torment me, but none as horrible as the one I'm about to tell you. This happened today. I went to bed around 1 a.m. and woke up around 4 a.m. hungry. I go down to the kitchen, drink some yogurt and eat a cookie. I go up again to my room. I lie down and fall asleep, but not quite. I stay awake, half asleep with the fucking sleep paralysis. In front of me, next to my bed, I see a figure's head moving frantically, as we see in horror movies, serious shit. I wake up, or at least I think I wake up. I sit on the bed, but something is wrong. I feel a strange presence in the room. I run to the bedroom door, but I don't get there. I wake up again, this time seeing a black arch on my bedroom ceiling. Inside the nightmare, I try to leave my room and go to my father's room. My parents sleep in separate rooms. When I get there, I open the door. He's sleeping. I try to wake him up, but he doesn't. I wake up again, suspecting that I'm still in a dream, but I'm totally confused. I get up from the bed and walk over to my bedroom door. Halfway there, I feel a presence behind me. I look back, and it is me, with a demonic smile on my face. I wake up again. I run to my mom's room, scared to death. She's sleeping, but wakes up. I tell her that I was having nightmares and ask to sleep next to her. I'm an adult man, so imagine the fear I was about to ask to sleep next to her. I lie down, she starts laughing viciously. I get chills, but I'm not an easy guy to scare. I look at my mother and she has the same smile as me in my previous dream, laughing as if enjoying my suffering. I get angry and ask that if he's tormenting me. I grab the thing that is both my mom and the thing by the neck with anger and choke her. I woke up again, this time to have another paralysis, within the ordinary this time. And then I really woke up, glad to be really awake this time. I'm 22. I used to have sleep paralysis almost every night, and as vivid as some of those times were, the demon, its voice in garbled language. The thing that freaked me out the most is I never had sleep paralysis on a night that my dog slept in my room. Not once. I spent lockdown alone, and one night I had sleep paralysis, the first time in a long time. I woke to being paralysed in my room on the second floor, and looked around my room as far as my eyes would allow. Everything was normal. My lava lamp I left on was rising and falling, and a breeze was blowing through the open window, causing the blind to gently knock against the frame. I sleep with my bedroom door open, a habit I picked up when I lived on a boat for a few years, and just got used to very little privacy. It just feels more normal for me. Having the door open, I hear everything in the flat if need be, and I always wake if there's a sound out of the ordinary. Another sailing thing. After a few seconds, I hear the door rattling downstairs on the ground floor. The door into my flat. My first thought is someone is breaking in, and I'm fucking paralyzed at the moment, so I start to freak out. More so than the normal being on edge because of the sleep paralysis. That's when I hear the door swing open forcefully and then slowly fall back onto the latch. It's then pushed and clicks back to being shut. My heart drops out of my ass at this point, but it doesn't get any better from here. An adult male voice that is mockingly high-pitched, like a grown man pretending to be a young child, in a sort of nursery sing-song melody, jeers this up the stairs clearly and loudly. "You weren't scared before I got here, but cannot move now I'm near. You're sticky stuck with fear and glue. Now hear me come to find you." Immediately after it finished taunting me, it began to run up the stairs. It sounded like 2 steps at a time and was heavy and fast. I heard each loud thud, the floorboards creak with the pressure and bounce back when released. I heard it make it to the landing and run around to the second set of stairs. Thud, creak, release. Thud, creak, release. Thud, creak, release. Just when it should have made it to my doorway, I could move. I shot up and out of my bed with my heart racing, ready for whatever my fate was to be. Nothing came though. I had a good search around the flat, locked the door to my flat. It wasn't previously locked, as it isn't the door to the street, and I trust my one neighbour to not kill me in my sleep, and basically went back to sleep. I tried to stay awake, but I was extremely tired and kept drifting off. The rhyme was honestly terrifying and very new, but since I used to have sleep paralysis regularly, I've started writing a lot of poetry, so I will explain the song that way. It still creeps me the hell out though. Not my visual sleep paralysis by any stretch, but the most terrifying and most audibly vivid by far. It was the year 2010, and for some reason, my friends were always talking about using a Ouija board, and if one of us finds one, grab it. At the time, the mall close by, we had a Spencer's, and I saw a Ouija board for sale. I bought it and invited my friend to come over. We were both skeptical, and I trusted her. So we went to my dorm room and decided to play. So we set it up on a makeshift table in the middle of the room and started it off. "Ouija, Ouija, are you there?" The board pointed to the yes, and I looked at my friend. "Did you do that?" She looks at me. "No, why the F do you think? Are you messing with me, Grumpy?" I looked at her and said, no. So we went back to ask, "Are you from the sun or from the moon?" The pointer points to moon, and it just feels nasty in there. But again, me being skeptical, I thought my friend was messing with me and continued on. "What's your name?" It doesn't answer. So I ask it what it wants, and then the thought moved violently and quickly and spells out my friend's name. I look at her and she's trembling and scared shitless and yells at me to stop and to tell her I'm not doing shit and she must be, and both of us are panicking. I ask it one last question. "How?" "KILLYOU," and then spelled my name. Then the room and shit falls off the wall, and I thought I ended, and I said goodbye, but my friend wouldn't touch it and I never got an answer back. The next day, I drove as fast as I could to return that board. Nope, not doing it. Usually Spencer's has no return, but clearly shaken up, the manager approved it and I left. Paranormal Activity 2 came out this year, and I decided to go see it with a group of friends. After I take everyone home and head back home, I'm heading to my dorm room and my vehicle stalls on a railroad crossing. Yes, no reason, just stalls. At this point, I had just gotten it, and there was no mechanical issues, and it just won't start. Finally, I get it to restart, and Highway to Hell blasts through the radio. And out of nowhere, a train is coming. Fuck! No. Move. My seatbelt's stuck, my vehicle won't move, and then out of nowhere, my vehicle finally moves and I can control the radio again. Rather than go back to my dorm room alone, I drive to my mum and dad's house and stay there until morning. I wish that was the end of it, but it isn't. 2011, I ended up having to move back with my parents due to some financial struggles and help raise my nephew. So I helped out a bit too. From 2011 until 2014, I would experience strange episodes of a cross in my bedroom being turned upside down, intense suicidal thoughts. One night, a friend of mine decided to come over. We would have stayed at my place, except the cross kept turning around. I thought it was my sister and her friend messing me until I saw the cross move all by itself. At this point, I knew I needed to get as far as I could from this place, and fast. 2014 until now, I haven't had any encounters. I don't know what it was. I just know it scared me to death, and I will never forget the fear. I also try to avoid railroad tracks. To this day, my parents and friends say I'm crazy, but I experienced what I experienced. I'll never touch another Ouija board again. I got chased by a satanic cult once when I was a teenager, running around at 2 a.m. with my friend. But that was near the population. And I've run across ritual locations where whatever they summoned wanted an offering from me, way out in the Sierras. A tad bit of background. I grew up on a hill only a good 300 feet tall, to the east of Silicon Valley. Could see the valley looking west and a large lake looking east, with no roads or anything all the way to Highway 5. A rich dude purchased land for a golf course and country club. This was about a quarter-mile from my home. It was one of a kind, with a tennis court, golfing, several pools and a hot tub. 5-year round-type buildings and different functions, weightlifting, aerobics, party spot, etc. Then, there was a maybe 10k foot building down a bit further past the last swimming pool. Weddings, events, whatever. We at a certain point began calling it Motel Hell. This was when I was around 5. We went there a lot. At some point, the developer decided to abandon it. Pools turned green and then dried up. We were in our early teenage years at this point, running about, toilet papering neighbours, running about in the middle of the night, as we were invincible. Shooting flare guns at cops, etc., doing things that would get you thrown in jail as a terrorist these days. Sad how that has changed. We had seen the ritual drawings and such in the various locations around the place. Learned about some of them from the library. When we were going to the 10k foot party location, there would be large drawings on the floor, walls, etc. We would all notice that even if it was 100 degrees outside, it would be cold almost to see your breath. We knew people were there at night because our bus stop was in the parking lot, and we would spend mornings breaking the many hundreds of bottles left sitting around by the older teenagers at night. My friend's house, which was just over from the driving range, he moved in and could see invisible writing on his walls at certain times of the day. Invisible ink creates a ritual space for magic and not good stuff. He had some difficult times. I witnessed a lot of weird shit. Anyway, we were out running around at about 2 a.m. one Friday. We could see lights in the club, and decided to sneak up and around through the golf course from the back because there were more bushes and trees. We crept up, got into earshot and sight, and saw them performing rituals. After a few minutes observing them, one suddenly turned in his robes and pointed out into the dark towards us. Not sure what he said. They all sprinted out into the dark towards us. Not like they could catch us, but they tried for a good hour. The other one was a witch's dealio I ran across fishing in the High Sierras near Camp High Sierra, the Boy Scout camp. I'm a 30-year-old father of 3. This all started in 2009 or so when my eldest daughter was very young. There had been a snowstorm, and a few of my friends were trapped at the house that my girlfriend, my daughter, my brother, and I shared. Out of the people who were there, the only believers in the group were me and my brother. My daughter was sitting in her high chair eating dinner when she suddenly looked down the long hallway to the utility room from the living room. She stopped eating and locked in a silent scream and slapped all of her food off the high chair. I removed her from the seat as fast as I could and handed her off to her mom. My brother, her friend, and I stood in the doorway, blocking whatever it may be from the girls. At this point, the air was buzzing. Something felt very strange. Then my daughter finally takes in a breath and starts screaming, "Adaman, Adaman, Adaman." We of course all bristle at this because she doesn't really speak a lot at this point. Finally, the energy in the room goes down. After this, some other occurrences happened, but it's a lot, and I would hate to type it out for people to not even read it. The reason I'm writing now is that it's somewhere near a decade later, and now my youngest daughter is around the same age my oldest was at the time, and she's saying a lot of things that make me think it's the same thing. During the winter of 2009, there was a big snowstorm that hit my small Oklahoma town. If you know how the southern states deal with snow, you understand that this is a big deal. The snowstorm knocked the power off and over the period of a few days. This incident happened when the storm first hit. My brother, my girlfriend at the time, a couple of friends and I had pretty much been snowed in. The power was hanging in there. I'd made my daughter some chicken nuggets for dinner, and she was sitting in her high chair eating them. She had been eating for a few minutes when she stiffened in a silent scream and stared into the long hall that reached the length of my house. Instantly, the energy in the house had changed. There was almost a buzzing in the air. My friend, my brother, and I jumped up and put ourselves between the girls and whatever had scared my daughter like this. After she saw something, she thrashed her chicken nuggets off of the high chair, trying to get out. So my then girlfriend grabbed her and was holding her. We could all feel something looking at us. We assumed maybe someone had walked through the back door at the end of the hall, but we couldn't see anything. Then, my daughter started to scream, crying "Adaman" over and over. The friend that was there was a skeptic. He didn't believe in anything paranormal until this incident. The buzz in the air finally died down. We asked my daughter about what she saw, and the best she could tell us through baby talk was that it looked like Daddy with long wet hair, like Mommy. Obviously, it wasn't this clear, but I'm translating from toddler a little. So this was the start. A few days later, my daughter started having nightmares about what she called the blue eyes. The best we could gather was it was a group of kids, and all she could see was their blue eyes. One night, I woke up from a dead sleep and saw someone standing behind my fan. They were kind of hunched over, looking between the blades. Then I suddenly heard my daughter start crying at the top of her lungs. The figure dusted away. I used the word dusted because it was like the person just came apart. Normally, I would assume this was a lucid dream or something, but my daughter happened to cry in the middle of it. I jumped up to check on her, and as soon as she saw me, she said, "The blue eyes set the baby on fire." This is word for word minus baby talk. At this point, I reached out to a family friend. She made me a bag to sew into my daughter's teddy bear, and I did. My daughter's nightmares stopped, and we didn't have any more related incidents. Myself and the girlfriend broke up a few years later, and I moved to Texas and had some roommates, but only had visitation with my daughter. Nothing that happened ever seemed as if it was related to the earlier incidents, so I pretty much forgot about it. In this house in Texas, I started having issues with sleep paralysis. I would occasionally wake up and see a big pair of chattering teeth in my closet and wouldn't be able to move. I would eventually doze back off. I said to someone that it never bothers my stepson, and upon speaking about it to my wife last night, she thinks it may have. A few years after the sleep paralysis, my wife and my stepson came into my life. My stepson would often have nightmares, but one night he complained of being scared to sleep. This is normal because he's only 3. We asked him why, and he told us there were scary teeth in my closet. Not necessarily related, but it's worth mentioning. Years after that, we now have a 3-year-old little girl. She's very smart and advanced pretty fast with her speech, so she's pretty much understandable just before her 2nd birthday. She always had issues with sleep. She started telling her things about a baby scaring her when she was sleeping. A little while later, she started talking to us about random things. She's riding her car seat one day and tells us she saw me last night, but I was a spirit. She starts referring to this spirit as Spirit Daddy. Apparently, she follows Spirit Daddy around the house as he and his friends with blue eyes go into each of her siblings' rooms and jump and play. They crawl on the walls and play on the beds, then go to the next room and do the same thing. Then they run and hide until next time. So 2 of my children have described me as some kind of spirit with long hair, coming and interacting with them. The Spirit Daddy also apparently has friends that have blue eyes and are kids. For the record, this isn't like a family legend that we talk about. After the first occurrence, there was a kind of hush order on the Adaman. We didn't want repeats or for the kids to have nightmares when they were older. So some of these things have only just come up recently, one of them being consistent nightmares and manipulation of objects. So first off, at roughly 11 PM almost every night, something quickly runs along the deck outside, approaching my window, and only if even a single light is on. It hits the window very hard 3 times. One time when all the lights were off and the blinds were closed, I was on my phone and I heard footsteps quickly approaching, so I turned my phone off and hid it. Surely enough, when the footsteps got to the window, they went away as quickly as they came. Another time, I did the opposite for the sake of testing and sat in the corner of my room as far away from the window as possible, with all the lights off, blinds down, and only my phone on at the lowest brightness. When the footsteps got to my window, it bashed on it 3 times and then ran away. That part has been persisting for 2 months at this point. On to the next part. Most recently, I'm talking last night, things escalated a little more. Of course, there were footsteps as well, which I could handle without freaking out at this point. But when I went to sleep after that, I had a nightmare for the first time in many years. I have a fear of clowns, but that's pretty much gone at this point. However, it came back as of last night. So basically, in this nightmare I was in an asylum that was completely abandoned and run down, with red emergency lights that ran along the hallways, bathing in a blood-red tint. As I walked the hallways, I heard a faint sound of jingling bells echo through the hallways. This only made me panic a little more. I quickened my pace until I turned a corner to see a small figure standing at the end of a hallway, with a jester hat on its head and bells on each tip. I then quickly sprint in the opposite direction and get cut off numerous times by the small figure. I then decide to hide in one of the cells and hope that it loses its attention. Then, I hear the jingling of the bells and lights but slow footsteps approaching the metal door for the cell I'm hiding in. Me being me, I accidentally swear under my breath from being nervous. The footsteps and jingling then stop for a second. Then I hear strong pounding on the door, and it finally gives way after the 3rd impact, revealing a small clown doll. It then lunges at me, but I smack it to the side and it lands in some sort of contraption, like a paper shredder. I watch as it gets completely decimated, and I continue my search for an exit. As I do this, I feel an object in my pocket, and it's the clown's head. No matter how many times I throw it away, it always comes back. I then woke up from the nightmare. Everything seems normal until my parents say that we're going on a tour of an asylum. I think nothing of it and think that it would be kind of cool. However, as I get to the parking lot of the place, the memories of the previous nightmare come flooding back. I look around for the small clown, but it's nowhere to be seen. As my family and I traverse the halls, they all disappear one by one when I'm not looking. And with each family member, the lights get dimmer and dimmer, and the place gets more run down, until it looks exactly like my previous nightmare. Everything then proceeds exactly as it had in the nightmare until I'm left hiding in the same cell. But I look for the paper shredder thing that was next to me and it's not there. I then properly woke up this time. I check my phone and for the time and it's about 3 a.m. Then, as I put my phone down, I hear my door suddenly open, only enough so there's a tiny gap. I quickly rush to get up and close it. Needless to say, the LED lights in my room were coming on after that. With that done, I went back to sleep, this time with no nightmares and no dreams. Back in 2019, I had just moved into a new house with my family, and my room was in the basement. Me being a teenager, I wasn't complaining. I was down there often just watching YouTube and enjoying the privacy. Well, one day, I'm laying in bed watching YouTube when my dog Daisy jumps up. Ears up like a Doberman, teeth out, hair up, staring at the door, growling and barking. 10 seconds later, she abruptly stops, whimpers and runs to me. From outside my door, I hear 3 knocks, followed by a low, guttural growling from the other side of the door. It sounded like a wild animal, and to this day, I still can't take a guess at what kind of animal. I've heard wolves, bears, dogs and lions growl, and it wasn't like any of them. Originally, I thought it was my sister who loves to play pranks on me. So I get up, not thinking anything of it, and swing the door open so I could catch her in the act. But she wasn't there. Now I just think, oh, she's probably hiding somewhere down there. I'll find her and scare her back. I checked everywhere. My bathroom, the main basement area, her playroom, even the storage room. Nothing. I knew she hadn't gone upstairs because our stairs are super creaky and she's a heavy walker. There's no way I wouldn't have heard her. But still, not super suspicious. I put it off and went back to the room and continued what I was doing. About 2 minutes later, I hear the same 3 knocks, and my dog, now on my bed, is up again growling with her tail between her legs. At this point I'm frustrated and swing the door open to nothing again. I walk upstairs, go outside and proceed to yell at my sister for trying to play pranks on me. My mom and dad looked at me super confused and my sister swears she never went inside. My parents back her up with a concerned and very serious face. Now I'm genuinely nervous as to what it is, because my parents are serious people and I always know when they're joking. They weren't. I slept upstairs that night and my dog hates it in my room now. She won't sleep unless she's on the bed and waits by my door and cries to get out at night. She's fine in any other room. I got over it eventually, but I still have occurrences every now and then. When I'm home from school, we go inside the garage and then use the house key to let ourselves in. Well, when I got home that night and tried to let myself in, the key wasn't there. I had to call my sister 5 times to let me in. I got mad at them for losing it and they swore that it was there when they got home. They get home an hour before me. I told my parents about it and they both searched for it for half an hour, checking the whole garage top to bottom and didn't find it. Fast forward a day and my sister said the key was right back where it belonged in its usual spot. My parents threatened all of us for trying to play pranks on them, and when none of us confessed, even after being threatened to be grounded, they got seriously anxious. Just yesterday, my mom heard someone walking up the stairs and woke up to someone in a white sweatshirt, just about my height, walking around. My second dog, Stella, jumped up, and she's old, so she normally takes her time getting up, and ran to my mom's side. The thing just walked up the stairs and into the kitchen. She thought it was me, so she didn't panic or anything, but not 5 minutes later, I walked up the stairs for a drink and she got really confused. She asked me if I had come upstairs already. I answered no, and she got super scared. Because I wasn't wearing a white sweatshirt. I was wearing blue, and no one else was home. About 20 years ago, I lived in an apartment. I would hear knocking on the ceiling quite often. I asked the woman across the hall about it and she replied, "Oh, that's just a spirit. It stopped once you moved in." A bit after the knocking started, odd things would happen around the apartment. Things would be moved, windows closed, lights turned off. Things that you would say that I just forgot that I had done. Well, one night, I looked out my bedroom and saw the light from my computer in the other room. I went in, and the screensaver was off. When I went back to my bedroom, I lay down on the bed facing the other room to see if it happened again. It wasn't long before I felt something touch my backside. It was a forceful touch. From that time on, I would wake up with 4 scratches on each shoulder at least once a week. I switched bedrooms. The scratches stopped, but every time I was going to see my boyfriend, my keys would come up missing. I would find them in the oddest places, even though I knew that I wouldn't put them in the bathtub, the kitchen cupboards, or my dresser. I brushed it off like I'd just misplaced them myself. My boyfriend stayed over one night, and in the morning, he asked what I had done to him the previous evening. He showed me his neck. He had 4 scratches on one side and 1 on the other. It was as if someone grabbed his neck with one hand and scratched him. That was the last time he came over, and I soon found out that he was not a good person. I moved out of the apartment and into a home with 2 friends. I took the bungalow room. I could hear someone running in the attic every night. It stopped once I put a cross over the door. Other odd things happened. One night, we were going to my aunt's home to get my cousin's Ouija board. I distinctively saw someone in our basement when I was the last one to leave. My roommates also would hear someone walking around my bedroom when I wasn't home. A year later, I moved into my current home. My cousin moved in with me for a little bit. She would always say that she could hear someone walking up in my bedroom when nobody was home. Nothing much different than the happenings from my apartment happened, until I met my husband. That's when the traditional haunting thing started. Doors closing, things falling, lights flickering, brand new light fixtures breaking. One night, when my husband was away and I was working the night shift, I came home to find my back door wide open and the police pulling up. Someone had used a crowbar to remove a window to rob my home. My neighbour saw them taking things from my home and called the police. Had he not called, I would have walked in on them. Almost exactly 1 year later, someone broke into my home again and brutally murdered my husband. Again, I would have been home, but someone stopped me from going home right then. There have been some small things that have occurred between the 2 events and many more since. A car was speeding down the road and driving erratically. It would have hit my home, but it hit a tree and it changed course. 2 dogs were hit by a speeding car in front of my home. The dog that I currently have was hit by a car. Someone attempted to steal my daughter's car, but the alarm went off well after they were in the car. I had a beautiful Doberman that died of cancer when she was only 2 years old. Those are just some of the out-of-ordinary events that have happened in the past 5 years. 1 or 2 of these events would be normal, but all of them to the same home in a 5-year span? I'm convinced that whatever was in the apartment followed me. However, I do not think that it's malevolent. I think that it's protecting me like it did with my boyfriend. What I'm convinced of is that there's something very evil in my home. I say this because I would hear a very odd sound from outside. My dog would hear it. One night, my camera sent me a notification that it captured the sound. It sent chills up my spine that I told my children not to let any of the dogs out. I did investigate the area the next day, and I couldn't find any signs of animals. This same medium told me that the next night the lights flicker. I should tell it that it's my home and it's not wanted. Shortly after this, my daughter and I were cooking dinner. The lights in the kitchen were flickering for about 20 seconds before going out. I figured they were just burnt out, but I laughed and said, "Can you not? This is my home and you don't pay me rent. So until you start paying, you need to leave my stuff alone." I then walked into the dining room and the lights came right back on. I also have a sleep app that records while I sleep. Many times it says that I'm snoring. but it actually sounds like a death rattle on one occasion. I had awoken in the middle of the night and heard it myself. One of the recordings actually has some other sound at the very end that's overlapping the rattle. Another recording had me talking in my sleep, saying that something is heavy. Then you can hear what sounds like footsteps walking away. Recently, my son moved out of the home. I put my dog's food, water, crate and toys in the room. Past 2 days, my dog refused to go in there. She used to go in there if he was in there, but now it's to the point that I literally have to take her food out of the room or she won't eat.